Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's Rethink Education Family Support webinar. We're going to have 6 more sessions after this one to help families better support their children's learning while at home. And tonight's topic is fostering independence while working from home. And we are excited to have 2 very special guests from the Rethink team with us. We have Christine Barberio and Iris Ellington, and they're going to be presenting to you tonight. So I'm going to turn things over to them so that they can get started on this session. And again, welcome, ladies.
Thanks so much. We're so excited to be here with everybody tonight. My name is Christine Barberio. I'm the Southwest Regional PD Coordinator for Rethink Education, and I'm also the mom of 3 public school students. I have 2 high school boys and a 4th grade girl.
Hi, my name is Iris Ellington, and I'm the Southeast Regional PD Coordinator. I'm the proud mom of 3 young adults and 4 grandchildren. Amber will be monitoring the chat this evening to provide assistance and answer any questions you may have as we go through the presentation.
All right. Well, we're so excited to talk about this topic about how you can help your child develop independence when they're completing homework. Maybe they're working from home because of quarantine or illness, or maybe they're there for full remote learning. We're going to be focusing tonight on 3 key areas. First, establishing effective routines. Second, teaching your child how to own their learning. And finally, how you can become a partner with your child's school. We hope that you will leave tonight inspired by the ideas that we share in our presentation and by the conversations that you may hear in the webinar.
So let's go over our meeting norms. These expectations we have will help for a successful session. So the first norm is to be present and actively engaged in activities and discussions. Be respectful of others. Place questions in the chat. Remain muted during presentations and start and end on time.
All right. Now, Amber, we were hoping that you could tell us just a little bit about the Zoom platform.
Absolutely. So we are using Zoom for our sessions, and I want to make sure that you can locate the chat bar. So take just a second and find the icon that says chat. And this is how you're going to be able to participate in tonight's session. So what you will do is click on that button, and then you'll see the little window that you see to the right. What you'll notice is there's a to field, and right now it says everyone. So if I type in a message and hit the enter key, everyone's going to be able to see it. And that's a great place to put comments, feedback. But if you have a specific question that you'd like to answer, if you click on that everyone drop down, you'll see the names of different people in our session. And if you will choose my name, Amber Garvey, to ask any questions that you don't want everybody else to be able to see, so if you're having technical difficulty or something, just go ahead and type in that message and it'll send it directly to me. And this is how you can enter any comments or questions in tonight's sessions. So at times you may want to respond with a reaction. We love those reactions because they give feedback to our presenters so they know if you're listening, if you're actively engaged. And you'll see the reactions button at the bottom of your screen, or it may be at the top, but you see the little smiley face icon. And if you click on that, there are some reactions that you can send that will show what you're feeling or thinking during that moment. So please be sure to use those. And now that we kind of have a better understanding of our Zoom platform, I'm going to turn you back over to Christine and Iris.
Super. So we want to get started with our what, how, and why. Understanding the reason for creating an at-home learning environment will guide us in making the best decisions for our children. Establishing and consistently carrying out routines for at-home learning, whether that be for homework, working during quarantine, or remote learning, will foster independence and set them up for success. Developing study skills and self-management skills to complete at-home learning are transferable skills. Your child will carry them with him or her and become life skills. It's important to develop good habits from the start. So establishing routines for at-home learning allows your child to develop those self-management skills and take ownership of their learning. Establishing routines with your child can also reduce conflict in the midst of learning. We're going to look at several suggestions for establishing routines that can support your child in learning at home. As mentioned earlier, this may be in a homework setting or for learning during a temporary circumstance such as quarantine or remote learning. So we're going to look closely at making space for personalized learning, setting up routines, helping your child stay focused during at-home learning, kid watching, and conversations about learning. The first two, personalized space and setting up routines, are done in preparation for at-home learning. So we're referring to these as setting up for success. Staying focused, kid watching, and conversations about learning are ongoing. So we're referring to these as monitoring for success. So establishing the routines with your child sets the stage for success. So creating a learning place is important. This may be as small as just a designated corner in the room. The key is that the child recognizes that this is a place where he or she will complete all of their homework. It may be helpful to select a place that will have limited distractions such as TV or loud noise or a lot of movement going on so that the child does not lose focus. Involve your child in assisting and selecting the location. Once the space is identified, encourage the child to personalize the space. This can be done simply as decorating a pencil box and gathering supplies. There are a few factors to consider when choosing a personalized space for learning. Limited distractions. Where adult can monitor, particularly if there's going to be online learning involved. Where there's good internet connection and also good lighting. If the place is used for homework, teach the child to take his or her backpack to that location as soon as he comes or she comes in from school. This will reduce searching for needed materials when it's time for learning to begin. So here's some examples of personalized learning that have actually been set up in the child's bedroom. So you can see that it's out of the main space. And so here on the left is a boy's high school desk. And then you can see on the right is an elementary girl's desk. Now, inexpensive desks can be found at thrift stores, garage sales, or online marketplaces. So you might want to check there for just a little desk that you could set in a space for the child to work. So here's some more ideas of how families have actually personalized the space for their children. Notice in the first picture, the child and the parent created an at-home learning agreement. It is posted in the child's designated learning space as a reminder as he is working. Notice that the child and the mom signed the agreement. Creating an agreement, again, is a way to foster ownership of learning. The second picture shows how materials can easily be moved when the learning space must serve multiple purposes. When my children were very young, they actually had to work at our kitchen table. That way I could have all three children close enough to monitor. Each child knew to get out his or her pencil box or learning box, set it up, and then store it as part of the established routines. So think a minute about ideas that you might have to create a personalized learning environment at home for your students. So we see some great ideas being shared there. I've even heard some that that have actually been converted a closet into a learning environment. Great. So that's a great idea as well. So just being really creative is helpful here. And again, remember to involve the child in that process.
Mhm.
So again, so now we're going to move on, and we're still under setting up for success. And that is to set a routine for this at-home learning, which includes the where, when, and how. Just as we reviewed the where, that's a personalized space. Just a quick reminder, if the child comes in and says, hey, mom or dad, today can I maybe do my homework or do my learning on the bed or a comfy chair in the living room? Remind the child why the two of you selected and created a personalized learning space for him or her when they are doing their learning at home, and encourage the child to continue to go back to that learning space instead of moving around from place to place in the house. So now the when. Determining when is very important. It teaches the child the structure and what to expect. The when may need to vary depending on the day. However, work to be as consistent as possible. Shortly, we will look at examples of some sample of schedules and some important considerations when developing a schedule. Now, the how. That just comes down to practice, practice, practice. Remember, creating an at-home learning environment and developing an at-home learner are very different. Creating the personal learning space is something that we can check off our list. At the beginning, we had identified establishing routines as setting up for success. So utilizing the learning space, monitoring my child by watching for signs of stress and talking with him or her and coach my child on these study skills and self-management skills, that is something that's ongoing. And so that is really for monitoring for success, and that does take the practice. There are factors that you want to consider for establishing this at-home learning routine. Really think about the age of your child. Young children are going to have shorter attention spans, and they're going to need to have more frequent breaks during this learning time. So establish those break times as well. You want to involve your child in what those break times might look like. So even thinking about your schedule. So if the child maybe finishes one assignment, then build in a 5-minute stretch break, exercise break. If a child is required to read, let's say 20 to 30 minutes a day, you might want to break that up for 10 minutes at a time and then allow the child to have a break and then go back to reading. So that might be just some ways you work through that with your child. Establishing also how to handle when your child does not understand something. For example, if a child doesn't understand a math problem, the routine could be that he or she attempts the problem, brings the problem and asks for help, but also has where they have tried it and attempt that, or have read the directions and that type of thing. And so that they're not just coming to you and saying, I don't understand, I don't get it. So I'll ask them to, attempt the problems as part of that routine of how to establish if I don't understand. Also, you want to establish the quality of work that you expect to see from the child. So don't accept low quality work from the child. Encourage the child to start things like reading all directions, encouraging completing all sections of the assignment. Expect neatness and legible handwriting. If the child is completing math assignments, expect them to show their work and use the teacher's strategies. Another thing you might have to consider when establishing routines are shared devices. So if you have multiple children using a shared device, you need to build that in the schedule. Which child will start with the device? How long will they keep the device before passing it to the next one? So set those routines, and then again, for monitoring for success, review them frequently. Now think about some routines you have found helpful when completing an assignment with the child. And if you happen to have any questions, you can also put those in the chat. Oh, so I see one has recommended get the hard stuff out of the way first and then move to the easier. Great suggestion there.
I also see that somebody put in that for a young child, like a kindergartner, that they're using like a big dining room table. And so the child can really spread out, which with those little or younger learners, that's such an important detail because they might need space to move manipulatives or color or do whatever. So I love that idea. That's another great one.
Super. So here are some visuals that families have found helpful in maintaining an established schedule. If you look at the first picture, this is an agenda that was actually provided by the school. And so the student, you can see, writes down the assignments and then brings it home. And also, so they've got their assignment there for them to see. And this way, this encourages the child to stay organized. The second example is a two-sided folder where one side is for the work to turn in and one side is for work that's coming home. The third example that you see is just a simple whiteboard where the child and a parent, or it could be just the child depending on the age, has listed the assignments for the week, and then the child completes the task as they complete them each day. So those are just great examples. So now monitoring for success. As we said, the first few were setting up for success and establishing those routines. And now we want to really monitor for success. And so staying focused is key. You probably remember how difficult it was to stay focused during independent work when you were a child. I can remember my kids often getting just distracted and then trying to distract me so that I would move away from the routines that we had established. As I mentioned earlier, when my children were very young, they did all work at the kitchen table. But as they got older, they moved their personal learning space into their rooms. And I can remember checking on my children to find maybe one playing with some toys or being distracted by something in their room. So I learned that our routines and our expectations had to change, and that we needed to come up with a procedure to help the children to stay focused when they were working within their room. So we worked to come up with some visual clues, or also with just one-word reminders that I could say when I noticed that they had been distracted, and to get them back on track. Some other suggestions might be to role play, or playing pretend, and that works for younger children. When you say something like, oh, the teacher has asked you to show another student how to complete the task. Can you go in and pretend like you're doing that while you're doing your work or completing your task or reading aloud? For, other older students, that may not work, but just having that conversation about taking responsibility because they are getting older and they can demonstrate maturity. This is a great way to start to demonstrate that maturity and self-management skills. That might be just what it takes to help children stay focused. Encourage your child to self-regulate. So talk to your child about how it feels when they get frustrated because the assignment seems too hard. Brainstorms ways that he or she can respond when they feel those frustrations starting. Talk with the child about ways they can stay on track when they're just getting bored or tired or simply do not want to do a task, particularly sometimes that harder task. And that might be a great suggestion then to go back and put that task first on the list so we get it out of the way. But those things are very important to encourage the child to self-regulate, but also let the child know it is okay to struggle. Encourage them to struggle. Tell them that, talk to them about this as a sign of growing and a sign of being more independent as a learner, and praise the children for working through, and knowing that it's okay to struggle when the work is really challenging. Also, think about the length of time, and how long, again, should a child work before taking breaks. So now we're going to actually take a look at some at-home learning schedules. On the left, you see so we're going to see also some sample remote learning schedules, but we're going to first look at, on the left, the homework time. So you might want to schedule your afternoon or homework time where that they are coming in and they have a snack, and then they do a task, and then they take a brain break, a task, and just continue to repeat. This is where, again, every family really needs to think through your activities and create a homework schedule that best fits your child, so that they have time to complete homework, have time for free time, family time, and extracurricular time. It is important that you also build in those brain breaks. So if you move to the far right, to the quarantine time, one of the things that we suggest here is really to follow the school's daily schedule as closely as possible, because that will just make it more consistent and easier when the child returns to school. So think about that. Also, you want to include time frames for work, again, brain break, break times, but you also want to have activities included so that if the child finishes early, that again, they're staying on a work time schedule. And so encourage things then, have things planned like independent reading, educational games. Calendars or digital organizers really may be helpful. And again, going back to some of those visuals. So now we're going to look deeper at the sample remote learning schedule.
So Iris, I think all the things you're saying are so important. And so one of the things we want to talk about is if your child does end up at home for full remote learning and you're needing to kind of have a full day, we really want to talk through what that could look like. Amber has put into the chat for you guys the PDF version of this possible remote schedule. So you'll be able to have this as a guide. A couple of things that we want to highlight from this schedule that you might want to consider. First of all, you really want to get your day started by 9 a.m. So have a really well-established routine for waking up, getting dressed, eating breakfast, so on and so forth. You'll notice that we start the day by reviewing the day's plan. This is so important. You need to, as a parent, go into whatever LMS your child uses, whether it's Google Classroom or Canvas or another program. You need to look through it with your child, have a sense of what they're supposed to look at. Look at things that the teacher has sent you, emails, information about what's upcoming, any work that they were struggling with from the day before. So you kind of want to set the stage for the day. Then you'll notice that up to lunch, there's a couple of different academic work periods. Iris already mentioned the fact of how important it is to have your child understand that if they think they finished the assigned work, they should still do academic work until the end of that block. We also put in several things like physical activity, so essential to get your kids up and moving in a long day. And also having that creativity and fun time. Legos, artwork, things like that, that can kind of allow some more independent, kind of like focused thinking. Also considering, do you have non-digital activities for your child to do? If so, you may want to have one block in the morning that's on the computer and one block that's off. Of course, lunch and chore time, you want to be thinking about including your child in healthy meals, including them in cleaning up and taking care of the home. And then you see in the afternoon, we again have a couple of academic blocks coupled with some outdoor time. So if that weather permits, you want to get outside, really get some fresh air and get yourself moving. One thing we encourage in a long day is to have an independent interest time so that when your kid is going to work, they feel like they can study something they're interested in. So maybe community service projects or a hobby they're interested in. And then you'll notice that parent-child check-in, we end the day with this. So again, going back into the system, did your child complete all components of an assignment? Did your child do quality work? What questions do they have for tomorrow? And then, of course, Iris already mentioned, having a really well-established kind of afternoon routine that includes all the different things that a child might see in the day. So if you are on remote learning again, creating a really clear schedule for your family and your kids helps everybody manage and not have the days seem long and kind of dull and boring. So that's just some great tips on that. All right, we're going to move ourselves along, and I'm going to put it back to our session. Iris, you're up.
Thank you. So we want to now really focus on monitoring for success, and that really becomes kid watching. You know your child better than anyone. So watch for those signs of growth and times of stress. Watch for signs of your child developing independence and praise him or her. Praise with details. Instead of just saying, good job, say something like, I noticed you tried so hard on the math problem and you didn't give up. I noticed that you realized you were getting frustrated, so you took several deep breaths to calm yourself. So becoming an independent learner requires structure and discipline. While it might be tempting to reward your child with screen time, it's beneficial to not include screen time as a rewarded break during this academic learning time. Children often struggle with stopping in the middle of a game, even though the break is over. So instead, you might say, we will have 2 hours after dinner. If you put forth a strong effort during your work time and you finish the assignments, then you may play a video game after dinner. So again, just watching and praising your child. So now we want to talk about talking with your child to help them reflect. Again, a great way for monitoring for success. And we encourage that you start each morning with some questions, interacting with your child. You might ask questions like, what class or subjects do you have today? Do you have any assessments today? What resources do you need? A question that you might ask says, if you look in the middle, says, when I was a kid, we really liked to play dodgeball at recess. What do you like to do at recess with your friend? So if you notice this question, you actually are relating to the child about when you were a child, and you're also asking questions that will give something other than a yes/no response. So now we want to take a look at the talking with your child to help them grow, or checking again to continue to grow. And we're again monitoring for success. So after you've asked morning questions and everyone's been about their day, end your day with questions. This may be around a dinner table, at more of a, getting ready for bed kind of conversation, but some questions you might ask is, how far did you get in a learning task today? What, here was one that I ask a lot with my children. What was the funniest thing you saw today? They normally like to outdo each other with their funny stories. Tell me something good that happened today. What did you discover? What was hard? So again, asking those questions that encourage them to respond with something other than yes or no. Again, a great way for monitoring for success. One question you might always ask is, what will make tomorrow better? So that you're going ahead and setting up for that success for tomorrow.
All right, well, great. Now we're going to move into the next part of our presentation, which is going to be about how do you teach your child to own their own learning. And this is really the why. This is why having the ability to create independent learners is so important. And so we're really going to dig into this a little bit. So all of us as parents have one goal. We want to raise happy, successful kids who go out into the world as independent and productive members of society. The reality is that trying to create independent kids is one of the biggest challenges for us as parents. All of us as parents want to protect our children from hurt or disappointment or unsafe situations. And sometimes when we're trying to protect them, we're really not allowing them to develop some of those independent skills that they may need. I know as a parent and as an educator, I have seen children in my classrooms who are incredibly independent students that when their parents come in to volunteer or for a conference, kind of revert to being less independent in the presence of their parents. I've also seen as a parent myself that my own children, who are very independent learners at school, will come home and try to convince me and my husband they can't do it, they don't know how, they don't understand their work. So a couple of things that we want to share with you today are some takeaways that we hope that you'll enjoy that might help you. We have two different takeaways today. These are to help you as a parent understand developmentally what can your child do. Amber has put these into the chat for you. This first one is from Teacher Vision, and I love it because it tells you by grade what are their attributes, what skills should they be capable of doing, and how you can help. The second takeaway is by their age. And what I love about this is it goes beyond the school day and talks about kind of all the different typical things you might see in a child of that age. One of the reasons we want to give you this is so that you have the ability to say, what is my child capable of? Could my child do this even though they might be, younger than I thought they would be at that age? Now we know every kid's different, so the timeline for every kid is different. Your child may reach these milestones at different places, but it's a good guide to kind of get you started. So here's a couple of good tips that can kind of help you foster independence. First, problem-solving skills and strategies. Iris already mentioned this. Before your child gets stuck on their work, you want to have a list, a set of things they can do before they come to you saying that they can't do it. Iris also mentioned something that is so important, which is allowing them to struggle. We've shared with you now an article from the Big Life Journal that Amber's put into the chat. The Big Life Journal is a program that is based on the growth mindset. The growth mindset is the idea that we can all grow, learn, develop any skills that we want if we are willing to learn from our failures and our defeats, and we're willing to keep going. So teaching your child to struggle can be a big game changer, because once they understand how to work through challenging situations, they develop that grit, that perseverance that they're going to need in life. And we know that as adults, they're going to need those. The last thing that I want to talk about is those emotional responses. We all know as parents that kids can really evoke some emotional responses from us. So here's a couple of kind of teacher tips that might help you stay away from those emotional responses. The first I like to refer to as the script. You really need to know in advance what you're going to say in response to your child coming to you emotionally charged. So if you know that your child has a habit of coming to you saying, I can't do it, it's too hard, I don't understand, you need to know in advance, how am I going to respond to this unemotionally? So your script might be, I'm so sorry that you're upset. What are you going to do to find a solution because you don't understand? So the goal is that you are able to come up with a non-emotional response no matter what they do. The second kind of tip for staying unemotional is what I like to call the robot teacher. But it's the idea that you need to have a plan in advance of your voice level, your tone, and the response that you're going to use that script, so that no matter how it goes down, you are calm, cool, and collected. And you're able to kind of respond with a quiet tone of voice, that you're able to respond where your voice level is low, and you're able to manage it without responding emotionally. So these are some great tips and ideas that we encourage you to think about. And we want you to think about ways that you might stay unemotional in response to anything your child might do. Does anybody have any ideas that you might have that you can share about ways to stay unemotional in the face of these kind of charged moments? Yeah, that's a great one, Amber. Deep breathing before you speak. My mom as a child used to always tell me to count to 10, but that is a great thing, like just giving a little space between the response. I love that. All right, excellent. Okay, well, let's move on. Now, the second thing that we want to talk about in owning their own learning is a work ethic. Everybody knows that a work ethic can be a game changer in your work, your school, your life. So how do you get kids to develop a strong work ethic? So first of all, we've already talked at length about how your child's going to work at home and having a strategy for that. Now, one of the things that we want to share with you just really briefly is this. We're going to give this to you as a takeaway, so you'll have the opportunity to put this up. This is a way to do homework that encourages that work ethic. So this strategy was actually from a parenting advice column that was in the newspaper. It was something that I saw and implemented with my own children, and have encouraged a lot of the parents that I've served in my classrooms to try it. Basically, it's 5 steps. Number 1, we've already talked about that out of the main space work area. So you've set that up. Number 2, you give them an age appropriate time frame that they're going to complete the work. So you might say to them, you have 30 minutes to do your reading and your math homework. So they go to that private space and they know they've got 30 minutes. You give them 2 tickets in advance where they can come out and ask for help. So they really have to be thoughtful about when they're going to come and ask you for help, and use those 2 tickets very purposefully. Then the last thing is you kind of tell them the 2 sides. If they don't finish within that 30-minute time frame, then they need to stay in that space till they do finish. But here's the kicker. If they do finish even early, they can come, show you their work, make sure it's quality, and now they've got extra free time. This strategy really helps them see that staying focused, getting it done, having a strong work ethic can lead to more time for fun, and it can eliminate those really long struggles of hours of trying to get some homework done. Now, if we go back, the other thing that we've talked a lot about that I just want to highlight one more time is the idea of having a schedule or a game plan for the week. So remember, one of the things you can do is set up in advance, maybe on Sunday night, what the whole week looks like. What are your extracurriculars? Where is the family time? Where is the rest time? And so you can think about it in terms of trying to make sure that your child sees that all the components of a week can be involved if you schedule it and plan in advance. All right. So just quickly, we want to finish up today by talking about becoming a partner with your child's school. One of the things that's so important is for you to be a team with your child's teacher and with the other educators in the school building. You know, just like when we co-parent with someone, we have to be on the same page. It's the same thing with schools. If we are a partner with our child's school, then our child is going to benefit from that and flourish and be more successful. So here's a couple of quick ideas that might be able to help you partner with your child's teacher and be really focused on creating kind of this opportunity for your child to feel like all the adults in their life are on their side. So first of all, really simple, build a relationship. It's so important for you to do anything you can think of that can kind of start that relationship. Volunteer, donate, send those cards, notes, and treats, whatever you can think of. The second thing is really important, and this is modeling respect. One of the things that we all need to ask of our kids is to handle themselves respectfully with the adults in the building. We also need to be really careful about how we talk about the teachers. Obviously, we might have frustrations, but those should kind of happen behind closed doors where the kid is not aware of that. So really modeling respect and expecting respect from your child to their teacher is huge. Another thing that's really important is expecting your child to be able to handle problems and work with the teacher themselves. So for example, if your child got a low grade on a test and they don't know why, coach them. How will they go talk to their teacher about that? Even young children can go and have these conversations. Another example of this might be is if your child felt like somebody was mean to them at recess. You don't have to be the one to handle it. You can teach your child how to handle it. The final thing is just to remember to ask questions. Sometimes we jump to conclusions and we get upset. And so starting from a place of asking questions and then being open to their response can be a huge way to make sure that everybody gets to a shared understanding without feeling frustrated. Now, the final thing we wanted to mention to you tonight is just making sure you're aware of all the resources that a school can offer you. We know that the last year and a half in education has been incredibly challenging, and we see that our kids have lots of needs beyond just their academic success. So schools can offer many different things that can help your child, so don't hesitate to reach out for that. There's all kinds of people in the school that can help with your child's emotional well-being. We know that there's lots of resources that can support if your child has a physical health need, the school nurse, the cafeteria manager. And then for academic needs, of course, the teacher's the first line, but there's also other people who might help you. If you have a concern that your child isn't learning at the appropriate pace, the school psychologist or counselor can help you navigate that. There are curriculum leads who help develop what your child's learning about. And then, of course, if your child has any kind of a specialized plan, like an EC plan or an ESL plan or a 504 plan, you can go work with the lead teachers for those. So thinking about all the components of what your child might need can be an incredibly powerful way to ensure that your child is able to be independent because all of their needs are being met. So we hope that as we've shared these strategies with you, that it's really sparked some thoughts for you about ways you can keep affecting and fostering independence in your children so that they really can go on and become the most successful, capable students possible. So we just really appreciate it tonight, and we're going to turn it back over to Amber. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you so much, ladies. That was fantastic information, and we want to be sure that you are able to access the information that was provided this evening. So in the rectangular box at the bottom, there is a bit.ly link, TAW4 Rethink, that will get you a link to this presentation. And inside this presentation, other than the great resources that were provided on the slides, here are some links for you as well. The first link will take you to a document where Christine and Iris have placed all the resources that they shared, the sample schedule, the articles that you can read, they're all there. Also, we have a link to the calendar of our upcoming webinars so that you'll be able to register for future webinars as well. And that last link is our Rethink Family Support page, where we have resources specific to families that can help you navigate curriculum, navigate things at home with your child, and give you a lot of different resources to help you help your children. And so those are there. And I'm going to have Christine click on the last slide. We appreciate you. We thank you so much for coming. And if whether you're watching live right now or if you're watching on YouTube later, we really do want to know what you think about our sessions. And we'd also like to get ideas from you on future sessions. So we're placing a link in the chat to a survey. It's a really quick survey we would like for you to take and give us some ideas of what you would like to see us present to you in the future, because we want to make sure that these are meeting your needs as parents and caregivers. So thank you so much. We appreciate all your attendance and participation this evening. Special thanks to Christine and Iris for a great presentation, and we appreciate you and hope to see you in future webinars. Have a good evening.
Thank you.